Sir, all freight trains will be, you're saying by 2031, all the freight trains will be privatized, along with 30% of the 750 railway stations. So profit-making coaches are the AC coaches, and you want to privatize that. Only the loss-making second-class passenger trains will be left with the railways. And interestingly, the private player just has to invest in running the trains. The driver, the guards, and the tracks were all from the railways. The railways will also maintain the station, while the bookings will be done by the Indian Railways Catering Tourism Corporation or the IRCTC. This means that the Indian Railways will only run loss-making passenger trains, while all the profit-making trains will be operated by the private sector. As the profit is only from AC trains, the railway losses will increase by this. So why are we doing this? Why are you just taking over losses and giving away all the profit-making things?
Family silver.
Yeah, exactly. You're just giving away the family silver to the private players, and we've seen what the private players do. They do not take up the responsibility when they do not see profits. They just abandon the project and leave. And the freight share of railways. You have may set out plans to achieve at least around 8,400 metric tons of freight movement by 2030. But today, it is only 26% of the total freight movement of the country which the railways are handling. So there's so much of gap there, and you're not even handling 50% of the freight within the country. So there's a huge gap which you have to build across. And the jobs in the railways, as I think Sureshji also, when he spoke here, mentioned about it. I'd like to add to that. There's so many vacancies. More than 2.65 lakh jobs are vacant in the Indian railways. You haven't been able to provide jobs for the youth in this country. At least in this sector, when there are vacancies, you can definitely fill that. And the South Indians don't get job opportunities these days in the railways.
Yes.
It looks like there is a effort to keep us away from these jobs. And more than that, people who interact with the locals, with the passengers, have to know the language.
Yes.
We've actually had so many incidents where there could have been accidents because the person handling that does not understand the local language, does not speak the local language.
Yes.
You have to be sensitive to people's lives. You cannot play with people's lives. Sir, an accessibility of railway stations for the differently abled, it has so much more to ask for. You've been saying that you're more sensitive and it will be considered, but even the committee has recommended, the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Social Justice and Empowerment recently assessed the implementation of the scheme for the people with disabilities, and they said there's so much lagging behind, and they have to provide better facilities. And before 2 years, before the COVID, there were coaches for differently able people. But now, in quoting COVID as a reason, these coaches have been stopped. But I think it is high time these coaches are restored and differently able people are allowed to use that.
Very good point.
And even when there are special coaches, it is being used illegally by other people, and unfortunately the differently able people do not have access to these coaches also. So that has to be taken into consideration. And the union government has removed 4% job reservation for the differently abled in many of the jobs, IPS, Railway Protection Force, and all that. I mean, in many places, I really don't understand, what kind of social justice are we talking about if this is not happening. And railway electrification. You've said there will be 100% electrification by 2023, and that is next year. You've hardly reached 73%. So what plans do you have to achieve this 100% electrification? And in my constituency, Thoothukudi, I'm quoting that as an example, but there are so many, more than 1,368 railway underbridges in this country which has waterlogging. But every year we only, deal with it to pump out water, and every year there's waterlogging in all these places. We need a permanent solution. And in my constituency, for example, like when there are rains and flooding, water from the sea also comes in. And pumping out water is not an easy thing. So you need permanent solutions for issues like this. You can't just have flooded underbridges. And the railway tracks we've seen more than 60 elephants in the last 3 years have been killed in the tracks. These deaths could have been avoided had the forest and railway departments worked together, communicated with each other, and coordinated.
Very good point.
The CAG report has even said that the basic signage is not available, and there is nothing to alert the loco pilots that it is an elephant crossing area and they have to be slow, and they're not sensitized. There's no training for them. At this rate, if it goes on like this, I think in a decade or so, we will not have elephants in this country. And railway safety, again, much was said about the railway safety. More than 13,000 train accidents across the country have killed nearly 12,000 railway passengers last year. And according to a recent report by the National Crime Records Bureau published in 2021, the latest statistics mean that on average, 32 people have lost their lives every day. This is a shame, and I think we have to think about the families of the lives which have been lost, and definitely something has to be done to ensure that there is safety, and we've seen so many accidents in railway crossings also. So I am sure the government will, and I believe that you will take action so that this does not happen. And